our discussion that we're going to have today. So my name is Sandra Karras. I work for Toyota Motors North America in Plano, and I work as a D&I consultant and education manager. So my responsibility is to help our executives grow their areas within the D&I space, and then also help our team members grow from an education standpoint. We have about 40,000 team members across North America, so excited to bring D&I to each of their locations. But I'm more excited about introducing our panel today. So let's go ahead and get started. Dolly, we'll get started with you. We'll move over to Kim and then Stephen. So Dolly.
Hi, my name is Dolly Thomas, and I am a lifelong Plano resident. I'm also the acting executive director for the Plano African American Museum. The museum we have just about complete with our first year of being opened, and I am just so excited about this this panel. I'm interested to hear what everyone has to say and how Plano has influenced all of these beautiful people and companies. Mm-hmm.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here. My name is Kimberly Mans. I was born and raised in Plano, Texas, one of the few, I think, these days that was actually born here, although I did leave for 18 years to live on the East Coast. So have recently moved back to Plano, have been here for the past 6 years. I actually have my own consulting firm called H3 Diversity, which is Head, Heart, and Hands, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, that has really been inspired by some of my experiences growing up in Plano. So this is kind of a full circle moment for me to be able to talk about my work and my passion with folks from my hometown. Thank you for having me.
And good morning, everybody. My name is Stephen Lewis, and as of 6 months ago, I'm happily retired, but prior to that, I was general manager for diversity and inclusion at Toyota and got to work with Sandra Karras. And so we were responsible for the education and training, the ERGs, accountability metrics, executive coaching, and on and on. And my history with Plano starts in 2016 when I moved to the community. And I'm happy to be part of the panel this morning.
Thank you, Stephen. And just a shameless comment, Stephen has taken Toyota to the next level while he was there, and we're excited to have him here today, talk a little bit about that corporate culture. So he is very missed at Toyota, but his legacy still lives on. So thank you, Stephen, for joining us. And Kim and Dolly. So before we get started with the questions, let's go down memory lane a little bit. So Plano celebrated their 150th birthday last year. That's 150 years of history, culture, and real life experiences. The Plano Culture and Inclusion Alliance was created back in 2015, as Heather mentioned, with the support of the business community, Plano Chamber of Commerce, and the current former Plano Mayor, Harry Rosselier. What started as a community-wide celebration of diversity and inclusion led us to our 9th year serving as a collaboration and networking group of professionals who've come together to share their best practices and tools, resources, and ideas to harness the power of inclusion and diversity within our work environment and community. And that's why we're here today, is to talk a little bit more about those best practices and what we've done and where we've come, where we're at, and where we're going. We look forward to looking back at where we've been and talk a little bit about what some of those best practices are. So why don't we get started? Dolly, I'm going to start with you today. Mm-hmm. What efforts are being made to preserve Plano's historical heritage and ensure that its unique identity is maintained amidst rapid modernization? We're growing pretty fast.
Oh, very fast, very fast. As a matter of fact, we were just talking about, I grew up in Plano, where Plano was only East Plano. There was nothing in West Plano but soccer fields and cows and horse farms over there. But Plano has not only is Plano celebrating their 150th year last year, the Douglas community, which is the area in Plano that was designated for African Americans, the only place that they could live back in the day, they're celebrating their 150th year this year, and we are celebrating it through the museum. Plano has always had a African American community, whether it was enslaved or whatever. But with the opening of the museum, it has added that last cog in the wheel for celebrating our history. The Plano African American Museum, the Heritage Farmstead, and the Interurban Museum, they're all tied in together because the workers and the citizens of Plano all use that same thing. We share each other's history, and with that completes, I think, the desire and the effort to expand on Plano's history. I am just so excited for everyone to learn about this part of Plano history. And I think that the city of Plano has always encouraged us to tell our side of the story. They've been behind the museum 100%. The arts district in East Plano, it's got kind of testy there because we thought that everybody had forgotten about East Plano. But now, since they've opened up and kind of re-innovated the East Plano and call it now the Arts District, I think everyone has that opportunity to come over and see Plano, that side and that part of Plano. So I'm excited about the future of Plano now.
Wow, thank you, Dolly. I know we dropped the website in the chat. I'm excited. I've been here now for 8 years now, and I have not made my way over there. So I am definitely going over there now.
Gotta come.
Got to preserve our history. We have to understand where we came from, right?
Exactly.
Thank you. Okay, Kim, moving on over to you. So you are our Plano native. So having grown up here, what was your experience while attending school and being part of this community?
Absolutely. So I thought the easiest way for me to answer that question would be to just show you a picture, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so this is a picture of me in the 3rd grade at Mrs. Carr and Mrs. McDermott's class. So if you're having trouble finding me, I'm this kind of little brown dot in the middle of a sea of white children. And so that's what my experience growing up in Plano was back then. You know, my family was the only Black family in my neighborhood. And so at a very early age, I started grappling with, like, what is it that makes me the same as all the other kids on the playground? And what is it that makes me different, particularly around issues of race and gender? And so honestly, because I had that experience growing up, I ended up going to Ursuline Academy in Dallas. And so my background, or the environment, was very similar. I decided when I graduated from high school that I wanted to completely change my experience. And so I didn't apply to any schools in Texas. I actually applied to schools in DC, because at the time DC was called Chocolate City because it was 70% Black. And I wanted to immerse myself in a culture where people look like me. So this is what my college experience looked more like. And you have a little bit more hard time finding me in this one. So this is me right there in the middle. I went to a PWI, which is a predominantly white institution. I went to Georgetown University, but I immersed myself in the Black culture there. So this is a picture of the Georgetown University Black Alumni Summit, which I helped lead for the past several years. But that was kind of like my first time to be able to understand who I was beyond being kind of the Black girl in the classroom. And so that's when I really started grappling with my experience growing up in Plano, and understood, like, what was it that made me uniquely who I was. And so probably like 6 years ago, I was given the work opportunity to come back to Plano. And I was actually kind of kicking and screaming a little bit because of some of those experiences growing up where I felt like I was the only. But to my surprise, when I came back, as I was growing up, so was Plano, I feel like. And so I think that's best evidenced by a few years ago, I actually lived with my parents during the pandemic and was taking walks with my parents every day. And just who we'd run into while we were taking walks was very different from when I was growing up, where it was predominantly white. There were people from all over the world, Black, white, liberal, conservative, et cetera. And so just those walks every day told me how Plano was different. I also realized coming back as I grew up that now, as much as race and gender were part of my identity, so was growing up here in Plano. So it was actually important for me to come back to my community to even find pieces of who I am with my high school friends, with my elementary friends and family. So I'm now actually very proud to have that also be a part of my identity that I recognize. And now it's kind of a full circle moment for me because part of how we all find belonging is to understand our past and try to create a future that really represents who we are and who others are. And so I'm excited just to be a part of this community and other communities that are working to ensure that it continues, Plano and North Texas in general continues to become more inclusive. So that's a bit, of my story, but in a nutshell, Plano looked very different when I was younger, and I'm proud of where it is right now and what it's becoming.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Kim. Yeah, I think what is the saying that diversity creates innovation? I think just having those experiences and those backgrounds and having left Plano and come back and bring some of that with you is pretty incredible. So thank you. Stephen, let's go over to you. So you had the opportunity to experience the community of Plano when Toyota announced their move to Texas 10 years ago. With other major corporations and other headquarters now located in Plano, what efforts have you seen to be made to ensure that these entities contribute positively to the social, economic, and environmental well-being of the city and its residents?
Oh, Sandra, you're right. So my history with Plano only goes back 10 years. So, but from that perspective, I remember when Toyota first announced that we were coming to Plano, members of the company reached out to leaders in the city of Plano, the city chamber of commerce, NGOs, and so forth, and got a dialogue going on. A big part of being a part of the community is communications and engaging. And the city leaders were so welcoming of Toyota. And immediately there was a good relationship there. And so I think from the city side, everything was done right. It was so welcoming for us to come. People reached out to us, engaged with us, got to know us. And from the Toyota side, we've always wanted to be part of the fabric of the community where we're located, whether it's a plant or a call center or our headquarters. And so we got involved early on, probably at the leadership level, to establish the relationships. But since then, it's really been grassroots. And I think that the key to it all has been the ERG community at Toyota. At Toyota's headquarters, something like 50+% of all of the team members are a member of one of the many ERGs that we have. And from there, you get the volunteering, you get the community outreach, and it's really a win-win for everybody because the community participates, or the community benefits if Toyota people are out building wheelchair ramps or cleaning up a park or Toyota benefits because it builds cohesiveness within the communities at Toyota, and people feel like they belong, and it makes them want to stay with Toyota and stay in Plano. So it's this virtuous cycle that's going on. So I know a lot of the other companies on the call and in the community have strong ERGs as well, and so I think that's been a really important kind of secret ingredient to making it all work.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's also been a collaboration even across some of those corporate entities within Plano. we're now, I think all of our ERGs are working together to help grow just the understanding, the allyship across all companies. So that's really exciting to see as well. Okay, so we talked a little bit about where we were years ago. So where are we now? So let's, and this is directed to all of you. So, and Stephen, we'll come back to you. How has the cultural and social fabric of Plano transformed over time? And what initiatives are in place to foster inclusivity and diversity within your organization or the community? Stephen, we'll start with you.
So again, my history, doesn't go way far back, but I was a little bit apprehensive about moving to Plano, to be honest, in the very beginning. Just stepping into the unknown. Of course, I'd heard of Plano and I'd had business trips to the DFW area before, but I didn't really know it. And so I was, like a lot of people, just sort of did my own investigations and looking around. And I'll tell you, one of the early data points for me was noticing that the city had a Black mayor at the time. And, um, and, and the reason I say that was encouraging to me because ethnic diversity, racial diversity, and good harmony. And Plano is not a majority Black city. If it has that, I think it's probably welcoming to all communities, whether it be LGBT or people with disabilities or religious minorities, what have you. And I think that turned out to be true, actually. And and so it's only grown from there, as you get to know people and to meet the leaders. I think that the city really does want to be a welcoming community. I think the city understands that if we can have businesses that come in, it provides good jobs, it provides customers for the businesses in the community, and that the companies benefit place where everybody feels like they have a home. And so that's been my observation over 10 years, that there's something positive going on both sides with the community and with the city itself and the companies.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, Toyota really had the foundation coming into Plano as well already established. So I think bringing some of that and ensuring that our team members knew nothing was changing, regardless to, where you're moving to and where you're going. And I know you helped put a lot of that in place as we transitioned over too.
Yeah.
So thank you. Dolly, let's move on over to you.
Not over here. And
Dolly, I think you're on
Yep.
mute. There we go.
Yes, yes. Yeah. I'm here.
All righty. So same
Can you hear me?
question. Yeah. So what initiatives are in place to foster inclusivity and diversity within your organization or community?
Well, of course, within my organization and community, we've always been a welcoming community. I grew up in the time of segregation, so I have seen Plano go from segregated to integrated. So it's that, and the people of Plano. Everybody always asks during integration, how was Plano? Well, we had very little problem. Now, don't get me wrong, we had problems, but it was very little and not to the magnitude of how it was in other places. I think that I have always admired our city leaders and the people who are the movers and the shakers of Plano, because they've always been visionaries. They they prepared for what could be. And because they prepared for what could be, they were ready for what actually happened. I can remember the superintendent of school during integration. He told everybody, look, this is going to happen. So it could either happen, you do it willingly, or you could do it make the government come down and make you do it. And the attitude with Plano was that, okay, we're gonna do it, and we're gonna do it our way. They did it their way, and Plano has been better for it since. When the people who moved to Plano, I think they moved to Plano because they know the progressiveness of Plano. We have our, as with everyone, we have our naysayers and those people who may not um, follow the same line as, say, our city leaders did, because we have had some people come in and try to change it. But Plano, the foundation and fabric of Plano, I don't think that will ever change. We have those, still have those progressive leaders. We still have the people that come to Plano and they want to expand, they want to include, and they, because we're stronger together. And I think that has been the motto for Plano. Well, unspoken motto for Plano. My dad was on the goals for Plano back in 1964. And for a Black man to be on a city goals for Plano, for making the laying out the plan for Plano, that was unheard of. So I have always been encouraged by our leadership in Plano and by the people, because those people that come to Plano, they have to understand this, the foundation of Plano. And we have a strong foundation, and that foundation is this city will be a strong city of inclusiveness. And we are diverse. I can remember I was telling some people at the museum when I went to school, my graduating class at Plano Senior High was about 1,300 and some change, and there were 20 African Americans in the whole graduating class. So from that, we have grown to this. The population of African Americans is still not very high, but our diverse community is. You know, we've still grown, and we're still that welcoming community. So I am encouraged by what I am hearing from the business community, and that we still have the D&I in some business communities. So it's very encouraging for me, and I think that we have a bright future ahead still.
Wonderful. Thank you. Kim, what are your thoughts?
Well, actually, mine kind of piggybacks a lot on what Dahlia was just saying. In the work that I do, I try to help people understand that there's like a paradox to belonging, which is you want to feel a part of a larger whole while at the same time feeling uniquely seen and heard. And so if you go one way in the pendulum too far or the other, then you actually lose your sense of belonging. So for example, I work with I've heard women say a lot of times, like in their family, like they're a big part of making their family feel like a whole, but there's places where they feel lost in their family as far as not feeling uniquely seen and heard. Whereas I'll work with like young people who are working so hard to establish their identity and their individual voice that they go too far to one direction and they forget to see how they're part of like a larger humanity. And so that's really kind of that tension for belonging. And I am seeing Plano work to really balance that tension. So the probably brightest example for me is where I grew up. I grew up on the intersection of Independence and Legacy, and there's kind of two shopping centers like catty corner to each other. And both of them, when I grew up, had kind of like large food chains like Tom Thumb and Kroger. It's predominantly white, and so it was just like very traditional stores. Now on one corner, because of the Asian Indian community that has moved into that area, it's predominantly shops that are from that community. So the grocery stores, the threading place, et cetera, is very much unique to that specific community. Whereas on the other side, there's still the very traditional stores like Kroger is still there, et cetera. And so that's to me a very visible example of what belonging looks like. Like Dolly said, it's like maintaining the fabric of and foundation of what Plano is, but expanding the culture so that micro communities can be uniquely seen and heard. And so a lot of times when people see those kind of shifts, they see it as threatening, like something is changing. But I do want to encourage us to think of it as like an expansion of culture and expansion of the faces of what Plano could be and how it could be articulated. So the more we can move toward maintaining that foundation, but expanding how we interpret our values and our history, and what Plano looks like, I think the better off we are.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, it is an interesting concept when you bring more of those ethnic stores or restaurants or it seems a little different. There's kind of two sides to it, right? There's one side where change is scary. It's like things are changing and they're changing fast and I don't understand it. And then on the other side, it's, feeling comfortable and safe for the folks that have those coming in because that's something that they're used to and they're comfortable with. So it's that balance, right, of trying to better understand and learn and educate ourselves on what some of those differences are. So thank you. Dolly, I'm going to come back to you. You talked a little bit about your education background. You spent a significant number of years in education. In what ways has the education sector in Plano responded to the evolving needs of students and families, particularly considering demographic shifts?
Well, I think the school district has evolved in that now we have not just educating the reading, writing, and arithmetic. We are dealing with the social and emotional changes in our students, and it is because of the demographic. We have a lot of students that are coming into Plano. When I retired 4 years ago, there were a lot of students coming in from all over the world, and we had to make that adjustment. We brought in substitutes who spoke other languages to help with the students that spoke those other languages. We had over 100 different languages spoken in Plano, therefore in Plano schools for a while. And it's always been just like the city, it was the need of the child, not so much the need of the district. It was the need of the child, and the bilingual programs, the social emotional learning, all of that was new to Plano. Now Plano has always had this stellar special education department. And I think while I was there were a lot of parents who would move to Plano who had special needs children because of Kathy CI and her special education inclusion program. It was pretty innovative for them to most school systems would pull out students and put them in another class. She had the mind that those kids, the special needs children, they have to learn how to assimilate into society, so bring them into the class. So I saw so many parents who say the reason I moved to Plano is because I have a child with Down syndrome, and they are your inclusion program is just second to none. So our school district, just like our city, would hire those type of directors and those type of teachers who would see a child's need for education, and although they may learn differently, they would adhere to that or adapt to that. So Plano ISD is still one of the best school districts in I think in the nation, if you ask me. But of course, I'm just prejudiced. But I think they have evolved with our demographic, and not saying that they have completely put aside someone else, but we have evolved with our demographic because we have to educate children. That's the main goal, to educate the children.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Wow. Now I'm sad my kids went to McKinney ISD. Thank
You better come
you.
to Plano.
Thank you for that. Kim, I'm going to come back to you. So you talked a little bit about, kind of creating that belonging and making sure that everyone feels that they belong. Let's talk a little bit about creating kind of that safe space. So you now serve as an executive coach and you offer training to create that safe space to leaders and staff members as well. So, in what ways have you seen Plano serve as a safe space? You talked a little bit about that with belonging, but what about the safe space for its diverse community and why has that been impactful?
So I think the corporations have been a big part of this. I feel like I'm echoing. Hopefully it's not you
Oh,
all are hearing it. But I feel like the corporations are having a huge impact on making Plano a safe space and shifting culture. And so when I thought about the question, I just thought about a few trends that I'm seeing in corporations that I think have been what's starting to help us get there as a society. Because I think the unique thing about corporations is that it's kind of a very concentrated unit of change and therefore a unit of impact that you can make versus sometimes it can be pretty um uh, like a big task to think about an entire community, but I think the corporations have such a big opportunity for us to see a culture shift in our area. And so for me, the biggest thing that I work with organizations on and that I have learned from organizations is putting as much emphasis on what you're trying to achieve as how you achieve it. Because a lot of times, like, because if you can get to your goals and your outcomes and get to your profit goals, then that's exciting. But if people are burnt out, people are ready to leave, and they're exhausted and they don't feel seen and heard, that you really haven't accomplished your goal of creating an inclusive culture and an environment where people can feel safe and seen. And so a few of the more tactical ways I think that we can work, and this can apply to the overall community of Plano as well, is really focusing on key decision points of any process, program, or initiative that we have. So for many corporations, like I help them draw out process maps for anything that they have. So for example, thinking about your recruitment process, there's some important inflection points where you make decisions that can really maximize equity and inclusion, such as where are you recruiting from, what's the job description, what's the language in the job description, who's on the interview panel. And so those are just decision points that if you can include the people that are impacted in it, can really shift then what the ultimate product is. So if you're doing a job description, then have you shown it to enough people to make sure that it's not alienating for anybody who might want to apply and it doesn't discourage them from applying. The other thing that I'm really excited that Stephen talked about is the importance of ERGs, which is really putting the power back to the people and acknowledging that even within corporations and in our community in Plano, there needs to be like this healthy tension between those that are creating policies and those who the policies impact. So the more that we can build infrastructures, both as a community and within our corporations, to ensure that the people's voice is heard and that there's a healthy tension that's always moving between policymakers and the people, then I think that we'll get to the type of solutions that really do get to the innovation and collaboration that comes from diverse voices being heard. And the third way is just like, you know, Dolly was talking about the foundation that we have grown up here in Plano, some of our values. The same thing applies to corporations. How are we rewarding our communities and our employees for living out our values in a way that really demonstrates the behaviors that we aspire to live up to? So are we just excited about the outcome? So in Plano, we just excited about attracting like different corporations, or are we excited about how we're attracting them, the type of values that they have, and whether or not it's going to fit with the overall culture of inclusion that we're trying to create? So my biggest I think Plano is doing a good job of it, continuing to like have like a certain foundation of values that we enforce, but making sure that everything that we do kind of goes through that lens, and we're not just trying to get to the goal as fast as we can, that we're equally thinking about the how as we are the what.
yes, yes, thank you. Those are some great examples. And you kind of led me to my next question, Stephen. So Kim talked a little bit about the corporations within the community. So we have quite a few large corporations within Plano. And we, many of them served as champions for DEI, not only internally, but all, for their employees, but for the surrounding communities at large. Why do you think that's an important role to play?
Well, it's interesting to me that, over the course of, my working years, I saw corporations evolve into some of the biggest advocates for diversity and inclusion really in the country. In some cases, ahead of, governments or the politics of the time. And you have to ask, why is that? And to me, it's about talent. And especially now, in an era of 3% unemployment, we need to retain people and we need to hire people. And especially, engineers and programmers and technical people. And these people are hard to find. And really, talent knows no boundaries, racial, ethnic, talent is everywhere. And so I think corporations have come to the realization that it's in their own interest to be beacons of diversity and inclusion, within the walls of the company, but outside of the company as well in the community, because you want to be noticed. You want people to say, hey, I see these people volunteering and I got to know some of them. They seem like good people. Maybe I should think about working there. And so I think that's where we've become or where we've come to. And I think it's going to only get stronger because, if you look at the demographics of the country, we're not really replacing ourselves at a great, we're not growing anymore. And so we need talent more than ever. It's going to become ever harder to find. And so if a company can be known as a place where anybody can be welcome, you fit right in, you belong, you're going to stay there and you're going to work hard because it's your community. So it's something that I've been very excited to observe over the years.
Yeah, thank you. So you kind of got me thinking about, so where are we going now? And you talked a little bit about why it's important for corporations to kind of play that role. So how do you think corporations are going to continue to shape in the future that cultural landscape, particularly in Plano, for supporting the arts and cultural events and community initiatives? How can we keep that going in the future?
Well, the obvious is we have to support the community through grants, donations. There's the money part, but I'm not going to talk about that. What it really gets down to is just being involved and to be engaged with the community. And I look across Toyota and all the people that are involved in all the different aspects and the different councils and the chambers and the committees and NGO boards, and the company encourages that. I think that the other companies in Plano encourage that as well. And it all goes back to being a good place to work and a good community where people want to come and stay. And so I think the future is going to continue to evolve with that, people being part of this and that and whatever works for the individuals. And I would say on the city side, it's important to listen to the business community for whatever the concerns may be. If this is mundane as the traffic light at our intersection at 5 o'clock is not right and people can't get out, just listen to what the companies need done. And for the companies themselves, I would say, number one, support your ERGs, because that's really the secret ingredient. If the ERGs are strong, if you're supporting them financially within the company so they have a budget to go do things, make sure that you're giving people the time to be involved. If somebody needs an hour in the middle of the day to go to an ERG meeting to plan something, I think it's in the corporation's interest to let them do that and not be so worried about watching the clock, because people are going to get engaged and they're going to work after hours to get the work done, but let them be involved in the community.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Dolly, I'm going to shift over to you. So as we continue to grow, how do you think residents could participate in shaping the future direction of the city? We talked about education, we talked about the kids. What avenues exist for civic engagement and community involvement? Can you share a little bit on that?
Oh my goodness. I told a story at another panel I was on, that as a African American woman, I know everything about everybody else. I read books by white authors, and I go to movies by white people and everything. I know about you, but do you know about me? Do you read books by Black authors? And I always say, get to know the people you live with. And that's not just in your neighborhood, but that's the city as a whole, because the city as a whole, that's why you live here. You don't live in a box, you live in a city. So you make that effort to get engaged. Come to the Douglas community, find out about the Douglas community. We are experiencing a lot of change in and around the Douglas community. Douglas used to be predominantly African American. Now we're a very, very mixed race, but it's not that the Hispanics in our neighborhood, they don't not communicate with the African Americans. It's still a neighborhood. We make it a point to get them involved in the things that we do. So I I told a couple of council members, come and visit. Get to know the people that you're supposed to be the council for. You can't just cancel from your street. And I live in Plano, but I go all over Plano and I meet people in Plano, and I get involved like that because this is my town. This is where I live. And if everybody takes that attitude that this is where I live and I want to know where I live. I want to know the people that I call my neighbors, not just over there, not right next door to me, but my neighbor in West Plano, my neighbor in North Plano. That way we can get involved in the culture, and you will understand why it's so important that everyone gets involved in cultural things, music and art and just lifestyle. Understand where people are coming from, and then that will take some of that fear of diversity and inclusion out, because when it all boils down to, we're still human, each and every one of us. We're just human in a different way. So it's we just need to understand that this is life, and life is worth living. You can't just live in a box. Get outside your box. Learn about people. Learn about your fellow human beings, and that has always been the way we were taught. That nobody is better than anybody else, but we need to find out who everybody is. So just get out there. Plano is great. It's vast. It's got all of this information. The culture is great. Learn about Plano businesses. Come over and see how you can help people and just live in Plano, and it don't just exist. Live. Mhm.
I love that. Get out there. I'm going to start telling people to get out there. That is a great way to put it.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
yes, yes. Mhm.
Kim, let's move on over to you. So you coach business leaders for a living. What advice would you give our business leaders listening to help create this type of legacy championing, diversity, inclusion, and belonging in their own sphere of influence?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has already been said. I mean, I think that Stephen was right around like really focusing on the ERGs and making sure, the power is given to the voices of the people that you're serving and all stakeholders. So not only your employees, your vendors, your shareholders, anybody that you serve, thinking about like what would it take to have them create a sense of belonging, I think is really important. And I think that Plano just has a huge opportunity because, I do diversity trainings all over the country and sometimes all over the world. And what I think Plano and North Texas uniquely has is that because of the economy, because of all the businesses moving to the area, because of the cost of living, there's this huge migration. And so there's diversity coming whether we like it or not. And so I think whereas in other cities, I can do trainings and there will be a very much a like-mindedness and experience in politics, et cetera. You can almost live in a silo in certain communities. I don't think you are, at least you're beginning not to have the same luxury in this area where you could be living next to somebody who has totally different views than you have, whether it's from a religious standpoint or from a political standpoint. Your neighbor could be completely polar opposite to you. And I think that's a unique part of living in this area. And so I think the opportunity that our corporations have and that our citizens have is around being able to have curious conversations and sparking curiosity, because I think we have more of an opportunity to be kind of, as Dolly was saying, to live out this experiment, this experiment we have of community and what that actually means because of how we're um, the migration in our community is kind of creating a diversity where we could really be strengthened and learn from each other. So I think the more corporations can help us have these conscious conversations where there's healthy conflict and there's curiosity, and the more that we can develop that capacity within our community in Plano, I just think that what we could create could be amazing, because I don't see that happening in a lot of other communities where it's a little bit more siloed and in a box as far as the values and the culture, et cetera. So I'm excited about the opportunities we have because of all the growth.
Thank you. Thank you. So we talked about where we've been, and we've created this place to foster inclusivity and diversity within your respective areas. Now, looking forward, and I think most of you have already kind of touched on this, but any final thoughts on how the city and its corporate partners can work together to continue to navigate future challenges and opportunities, and ensuring that these are sustainable and are creating an inclusive growth for businesses, small and large, and its residents. Any final thoughts on that? Why don't we go to you, Stephen?
I think a lot of it has already been said, but if you look at the city of Plano and the last, 20 years, look how many large corporations have moved there. It's like a who's who of the business community. I mean, and they're not necessarily in downtown Dallas or in Plano. And why is that? It's not, when you think about why does a business move, you can find low taxes and affordable housing anywhere. That's like all over Texas. But why do they come to Plano? And it's, in my opinion, it's the culture, and it's all of the things that we've talked about today, and all the things that the city has to offer for diverse employees, and it's building upon itself. I mean, since Toyota came, JP Morgan moved people from New York City. How do you get somebody to move from New York City to the unknown? Just like anywhere else, you give them a sense of belonging. Hey, this is where I belong, and it's worked. And so I just want to see that that culture continue to build, and the openness, the welcoming that Plano has. And I think the city and the communities and the companies are going to keep thriving.
Yeah, thank you. Kim, any final thoughts?
Well, I'm on a personal journey with my own personal belonging, which is having come from Plano and gone somewhere totally different and experienced a different culture, and now working to give back and create a community where I and others belong. And so the one thing I would say is that it's a part of our human evolution. If you see something that doesn't work for you, it probably doesn't work for others. And so how can you connect to like-minded folks and start creating something new? And so I would just encourage all of us to be a part of positive shifts, and that doesn't have to mean that we're taking away from anyone, but that it could just be an expansion and get better and better. So I'm excited about that trajectory.
Thank you. Thank you. And Dolly, bring us home.
well, I think Kim and Stephen have just put it all in it's beautifully said. We just need to get out there and enjoy Plano. You know, it's don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to talk to someone who may have a different opinion. Kim was exactly right when she said that you must not be afraid to have those crucial conversations, or sometimes those scary conversations. You know, it's this is life, and like I said, you got to live it. So I think we'll beat a dead horse, but Kim and Stephen said it just perfectly. Get out there.
Wonderful.
Get out there.
Word to live by. Get out there. I'm telling you, I'm going to steal that. I'm going to use that. That concludes our series of questions. I just want to thank Dolly, Kim, and Stephen so much for sharing your time, your experiences, your journeys, your wisdom with us today. With our rapidly growing community, thank you for reminding us why it's essential to keep inclusion at the forefront of our minds. I hope you've all enjoyed our discussion today. As we move forward, let's continue to prioritize our learning, both through education and by seeking to understand others, especially those that may not resemble us. Embracing diversity enriches our perspectives and strengthens our communities, and that was clear with today's conversation. And let's continue to commit our ongoing growth, empathy, and fostering a community where everyone feels valued and included. You can also continue that education by checking out the Plano's next summit for the Culture and Alliance. It will be held on Friday, June 21st from 8 to noon at JB Morgan Chase, and we'll have some additional great speakers there. So make sure to look out for that event in June. And I thank you all again to our wonderful panelists. And I thank you all for your time. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much to the Plano Chamber for hosting this event today.